The Unconventional Ascent, A Life of Donald J. Trump, Origins in Queens, The Foundation of Fred Trump. On a warm summer day, June 14, 1946, Donald John Trump was born in Queens, New York, the fourth of 5 children to Fred C. and Mary MacLeod Trump. The setting was not the glittering Manhattan high-rises that would later bear his name, but a more modest, though still aspiring, middle-class neighborhood that served as the launchpad for a real estate empire built by his industrious father. Fred Trump, born in New York to German immigrant parents, was a formidable figure who had, by the time of Donald's birth, already established himself as a highly successful developer of rental apartments and single-family homes across the outer boroughs of Queens and Brooklyn. He was known for his relentless work ethic, meticulous attention to detail, and a pragmatic, sometimes ruthless, approach to business. Fred built thousands of housing units for a burgeoning post-war population, mastering the art of navigating local politics, securing financing, and delivering projects efficiently. He instilled in his children a fierce competitiveness, a disdain for perceived weakness, and an unwavering belief in their own capabilities. Donald grew up in a comfortable yet disciplined household in Jamaica Estates, Queens. From an early age, he exhibited an energetic and assertive personality. He was known as a boisterous, sometimes unruly, child who was not afraid to challenge authority or push boundaries. Stories from his youth often depicted a boy with a natural inclination to lead, albeit one who struggled with the rigid structure of traditional schooling. His parents, seeking a more disciplined environment for their spirited son, made a pivotal decision when Donald was 13. They sent him away to the New York Military Academy, NYMA, a private boarding school focused on strict regimen and character development. This period at NYMA proved transformative. Thrust into a highly structured environment where discipline was paramount, Donald reportedly thrived. He adapted to the rigorous schedule, embraced the hierarchy, and channeled his innate competitiveness into the academy's systems. He excelled in sports, particularly baseball and football, where his aggressive drive and will to win were on full display. He rose through the ranks, becoming a cadet captain, a position that required significant leadership and responsibility. NYMA polished his raw ambition, teaching him self-control, the importance of rules, even if he would later challenge them, and how to project an image of authority and strength. While Donald never served in the military after graduating from NYMA, the academy's influence was profound. It reinforced the lessons of ambition and resilience inherited from his father, sculpting them into a more disciplined, though no less audacious, persona. The foundation laid in these early years, the competitive spirit of his father, the comfortable yet demanding upbringing, and the transformative discipline of military academy life, would profoundly shape the young Donald Trump as he prepared to step into the demanding world of New York City real estate, and eventually, the international stage. His childhood world, though anchored in Queens, instilled in him a powerful drive to escape its perceived limitations and to build something far grander than his father ever imagined. New York, New York. Breaking into Manhattan. Upon graduating from the New York Military Academy, Donald Trump initially enrolled at Fordham University in the Bronx. However, after 2 years, he recognized that his ambitions lay beyond the borough-focused real estate ventures of his father. He sought a more prestigious and business-oriented education, transferring to the Wharton School of Finance at the University of Pennsylvania. Wharton, with its reputation as a leading business school, offered him the formal training in economics and finance that would complement the practical lessons he had already absorbed from his father. He graduated in 1968 with a bachelor's degree in economics. Armed with his degree and an unwavering ambition, Trump officially joined his father's company, Elizabeth Trump and Son. While Fred Trump had amassed a considerable fortune building and managing middle-income housing in Brooklyn and Queens, Donald quickly understood that true prestige and exponentially larger profits lay beyond the outer boroughs, in the glittering heart of Manhattan. The established empire of his father, while successful, felt too parochial for his soaring aspirations. He wanted to build monuments, not just housing blocks, and he wanted his name to be synonymous with the grandest addresses in the world. His initial projects within the family business involved renovating existing properties and managing their expansion. But he was constantly seeking opportunities that resonated with his vision of scale and glamour. It wasn't long before he found his first real breakthrough property, one that would signify his arrival as a force in Manhattan real estate, the decaying Commodore Hotel. Situated next to the iconic Grand Central Terminal, the Commodore had fallen on hard times, a grand dame in disrepair. Trump saw not decay, but potential. He envisioned a dramatic transformation, converting the dilapidated hotel into a sleek, modern luxury property that would capitalize on its prime location. The deal was complex and required a deft hand, characteristic of the kind of high-stakes negotiations that would later define his career. Trump engaged in shrewd deal-making, first by securing an option to purchase the property from the bankrupt Penn Central Railroad. Crucially, he then approached the city of New York, arguing that a revitalized Commodore would bring jobs and tax revenue to a struggling part of Midtown. Through persistent lobbying and leveraging his father's existing political relationships, he secured a vital and controversial 40-year tax abatement from the city. This abatement, a significant reduction in property taxes, was essential to making the project financially viable, but it sparked criticism for essentially subsidizing a luxury development. Next, he sought a powerful partner. He convinced the prominent Hyatt hotel chain to commit to managing the new venture as a five-star hotel. With Hyatt's brand and the tax benefits, he was able to secure the necessary financing from commercial banks. The partnership with Hyatt and the city's concessions demonstrated Trump's early talent for assembling disparate pieces: a distressed asset, government incentives, and a world-class operator, into a profitable whole. The Commodore was demolished, and in its place rose the gleaming, bronze-glass Hyatt Grand Central, opening in 1980. This wasn't just a hotel, it was a statement. It was a visible manifestation of Donald Trump's ambition, his knack for identifying undervalued assets, and his audacious ability to navigate the complex economic and political landscape of New York City. The success of the Grand Hyatt firmly planted his flag in Manhattan, signaling that a new, aggressive, and highly visible player had arrived on the city's prestigious real estate stage. It was the first step in his journey from the Queens suburbs to iconic Manhattan skyline. The towering ambition, rise of Trump Tower. With the Grand Hyatt's success firmly established, and his reputation for audacious deal-making cemented in the competitive world of Manhattan real estate, Donald Trump turned his sights to a project that would elevate his name above the skyline itself. Trump Tower. This would not merely be another building. It would be a monument, a vertical expression of luxury and his personal brand, casting a shimmering, golden shadow over New York's iconic Fifth Avenue. The chosen site at 725 Fifth Avenue was previously occupied by the elegant Bonwit Teller department store. Trump envisioned a towering mixed-use skyscraper, a revolutionary concept at the time, combining high-end luxury condominiums, multi-level retail space, and office floors, all beneath a distinctive, angular design. Construction began in 1979, and when it opened its doors in 1983, the 68-story, though marketed at 68, the actual building was 58 stories. With levels skipped for a higher count, Trump Tower became an instant, audacious landmark. The tower's design was bold and unapologetic, featuring a distinctive bronze-tinted glass facade and a dramatic, soaring atrium that rose 5 stories, replete with pink marble, brass accents, and a cascading 60-foot waterfall. This opulent interior was unlike anything seen in New York commercial or residential buildings, designed to convey unparalleled wealth and exclusivity. The condominiums, offering breathtaking views, were positioned for the city's elite, attracting celebrities, business magnates, and international investors who sought to own a piece of Trump's glittering vision of success. Trump Tower rapidly became synonymous with the Trump brand, a flashy, ostentatious, yet undeniably successful image of luxury and aspiration. It was not just a building. It was a destination, a symbol of the decade's embrace of conspicuous consumption and ambitious capitalism. His public profile surged as a result. The building acted as a permanent, glowing billboard for his name. However, the creation of Trump Tower was not without its controversies, which would become a recurring theme throughout his career. One of the most significant involved the historic Art Deco friezes that adorned the exterior of the old Bonwit Teller building. Preservationists launched a fervent campaign to save these valuable architectural elements, and Trump initially promised to dismantle and donate them to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Yet, at the last minute, the friezes were reportedly jackhammered into pieces, deemed too fragile and costly to remove intact. This decision generated widespread public outcry and solidified a perception, among some, that Trump was willing to prioritize his project's schedule and profit margins over historical preservation or public sentiment. Another controversy arose concerning the labor used for the demolition of the Bonwit Teller building and the foundational work for Trump Tower. Allegations surfaced and later formed the basis of lawsuits and investigations that undocumented Polish laborers were employed under exploitative conditions, paid low wages, and worked long hours without proper safety equipment or legal protections. These claims, while disputed by Trump, added another layer of legal and ethical complexity to the project's glittering exterior. During this period of intense professional growth and public visibility, Trump's personal life also became increasingly prominent. His marriage to Ivana Zelnichkova, a glamorous former Olympic skier and model, was a fixture in the New York social scene. Together, they had 3 children, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, whose upbringing was set against the backdrop of their father's rapidly expanding empire and soaring public profile. Trump Tower stood as a testament to Donald Trump's audacious ambition. His ability to execute complex projects that captured the public imagination, and his undeniable skill in branding. But even as it rose, it carried the seeds of the contentious and uncompromising methods that would define his journey for decades to come, placing his public and private lives increasingly under the media spotlight. Beyond the skyline, Atlantic City and the high-stakes gamble. Having conquered Manhattan's dizzying heights with Trump Tower, Donald Trump's ambition expanded beyond the city's skyline, setting his sights on Atlantic City, New Jersey. In the mid-1980s, this struggling seaside resort had recently legalized casino gambling, presenting what seemed like a lucrative, if untamed, new frontier for a developer seeking exponential growth and high-profile ventures. For Trump, who thrived on notoriety and the perception of unstoppable success, Atlantic City offered a unique opportunity to brand an entire entertainment landscape with his name. His entry into the Atlantic City market was aggressive. First came Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino, opened in 1984, strategically located at the foot of the Atlantic City Expressway. This was followed by the acquisition of another established property, Harrah's at Trump Plaza, which he later rebranded as Trump's Castle and later still, Trump Marina. But his most ambitious gamble, and ultimately his most problematic, was the construction of the Trump Taj Mahal Casino Resort. Envisioned as the 8th wonder of the world, the Taj Mahal was a monument to excess and opulence. Opened in 1990, it boasted glittering domes, minarets, and a staggering 120,000 square feet of casino space, at the time the largest in the world. Its construction was enormously expensive, funded largely through high-interest, junk bonds, a risky form of corporate debt. Trump's belief was that its sheer grandeur would draw in a sufficient volume of gamblers to cover its massive overhead. Initially, the Taj Mahal lived up to its grandiose promise, attracting hordes of visitors and generating substantial revenue. Its opening was a spectacle, attended by celebrities and covered extensively by the media, further cementing Trump's image as a visionary risk-taker. However, the frenzied overexpansion in Atlantic City, coupled with high competition, led to oversaturation. Too many casinos were chasing finite gambling dollars, and the enormous debt load carried by the Taj Mahal quickly became unsustainable. Beginning in the early 1990s, the financial cracks began to show. Trump Hotel and Casino Resorts, the publicly traded company that owned his casinos, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection multiple times, 1991, 1992, 2004, and 2009. These corporate bankruptcies allowed the businesses to restructure their debts, shedding obligations to bondholders and lenders, often in exchange for a reduction in Trump's ownership stake and control. While the corporations faced financial hardship, Donald Trump himself largely managed to insulate his personal fortune, leveraging bankruptcy laws to preserve his assets while the businesses and their creditors absorbed the losses. This strategy, though legally permissible, drew criticism for its impact on investors and its appearance of prioritizing personal gain over corporate responsibility. The Atlantic City era underscored several key aspects of Trump's business approach. His willingness to take on enormous debt, his relentless pursuit of branding, and his aggressive use of legal mechanisms like bankruptcy to manage financial risk. It highlighted his ability to extract himself from difficult situations, sometimes at the expense of others, and his unwavering belief in the power of perception over pure financial fundamentals. Concurrently with his Atlantic City ventures, Trump's personal life became increasingly fodder for the tabloids. His highly publicized and acrimonious divorce from Ivana Zelnichkova, with whom he had built his initial Manhattan empire, unfolded against the backdrop of his Atlantic City struggles. This was followed by his subsequent marriage to Marla Maples, further fueling the public fascination with his larger-than-life persona. The high stakes of his business literally mirrored the high-profile drama of his private life, turning both into continuous public spectacle. The art of the deal, branding and public persona. Even as his Atlantic City empire teetered on the brink and eventually filed for bankruptcy, Donald Trump meticulously cultivated his larger-than-life public image. He understood that his most valuable asset was not merely his real estate holdings, but the Trump brand itself, a powerful, malleable symbol of luxury, success, and an aggressive, winning mentality. A pivotal moment in solidifying this public persona was the publication of Trump, The Art of the Deal in 1987. Co-authored with journalist Tony Schwartz, the book was an instant bestseller. It was presented as a blueprint for Trump's business philosophy, filled with seemingly candid advice on negotiation, public relations, and leveraging opportunities. The book painted a picture of Trump as a shrewd, courageous, and endlessly successful dealmaker, an individual who defied conventional wisdom and always came out on top. It became a cultural touchstone, cementing his identity as a business titan in the minds of millions, far beyond the circles of real estate and finance. The book's narrative of self-made success and relentless ambition resonated deeply with the spirit of the 1980s. The Art of the Deal wasn't just a book. It was a masterclass in self-promotion. It helped to craft a public narrative that often overshadowed the complex realities of his business ventures, including the accumulating debt and eventual bankruptcies in Atlantic City. The book allowed Trump to dictate his own story, presenting every move as a strategic genius, every challenge as an opportunity to emerge victorious. Beyond the book, Trump became a ubiquitous presence in popular culture. He instinctively understood the power of media attention, often seeking it out and skillfully manipulating it to his advantage. He became a regular fixture on talk shows, giving interviews where he held court on business, politics, and celebrity culture. His unique blend of assertiveness, self-aggrandizement, and unfiltered commentary made him a compelling, if often controversial, guest. He also frequently appeared in tabloid headlines, particularly concerning his high-profile divorces and subsequent relationships, further amplifying his celebrity status. For Trump, any attention, positive or negative, was valuable, as it kept his name, and therefore his brand, in the public consciousness. This period also saw the aggressive expansion of the Trump brand to various ventures beyond core real estate. The name was licensed to a range of products and services, from clothing lines and airlines to a magazine, a board game, and even perishable goods like Trump steaks. While many of these ventures were short-lived or ultimately unsuccessful, they served to reinforce the idea that Trump was synonymous with aspiration and luxury across diverse markets. Even ventures like the now-defunct Trump University, which offered unaccredited real estate seminars, contributed to this perception that Trump possessed unique wisdom that others could buy into. Through it all, Trump refined his public persona, that of an unshakable, unapologetic winner. He cultivated an image of unvarnished honesty, a blunt truth-teller capable of cutting through perceived bureaucracy and political correctness. This carefully constructed persona, propagated through best-selling books, television appearances, and relentless media engagement, laid crucial groundwork for his later political ambitions, positioning him as a strong leader who defied expert predictions and spoke directly to the public. He had successfully transformed from a real estate developer into a national celebrity, a master of public perception and the art of branding himself. From boardroom to reality TV. The Apprentice era. By the early 2000s, following the financial turbulence of the Atlantic City casino ventures and the public spectacle of his divorces, Donald Trump's name remained globally recognizable, but perhaps less universally associated with unmitigated success than he preferred. He needed a new platform, a masterstroke of reinvention that would re-establish his larger-than-life persona and reconnect him with a broader audience. That platform arrived in the form of reality television, The Apprentice. Premiering on NBC in January 2004, The Apprentice was conceived as a competition show where aspiring businesspeople vied for a one-year, $250,000 contract to manage one of Trump's companies. Trump himself starred as the host, presiding over a boardroom where he would evaluate the contestants' performance on various business tasks. The show became an immediate cultural phenomenon, drawing millions of viewers each week. For many, The Apprentice offered their first significant introduction to Donald Trump. The show expertly crafted an image of him as the ultimate corporate titan, stern, decisive, infinitely wealthy, and possessing an uncanny ability to distill complex situations into clear-cut judgments. His signature catchphrase, "You're fired," delivered with a dramatic finger point, became a pervasive part of the cultural lexicon, instantly recognizable. The brilliance of The Apprentice from Trump's perspective was its ability to reshape public perception. It presented a highly controlled, curated version of his business prowess, emphasizing his leadership, acumen, and financial success, while conveniently glossing over the considerable debt, multiple bankruptcies, and controversial practices that marked his past business dealings. Suddenly, he was not just a real estate mogul, but a mainstream television star, a symbol of American business excellence and a captivating personality. This period marked a massive resurgence for the Trump brand. His newfound television popularity led to a cascade of new opportunities. Increased licensing deals for various products and properties bearing his name, lucrative speaking engagements, and an enhanced presence across all forms of media. He was no longer just a businessman. He was a celebrity entrepreneur, a pop culture icon whose pronouncements on business and life were eagerly consumed. The Apprentice ran for 14 seasons, with Trump as host for 13 of them. He left before the 14th season, which transitioned into The Celebrity Apprentice. The show fundamentally transformed his public image, taking him from a figure known primarily within specific business and social circles to a household name. The perception of him as an unflappable, successful business leader, conveyed vividly through the weekly episodes, built a significant foundation for his future endeavors. It demonstrated his unique ability to command attention, generate excitement, and connect with a mass audience, albeit one viewing him through the carefully constructed lens of reality television. This sustained period of public visibility, built on an image of authority and decisive leadership, would prove invaluable when he eventually decided to pivot from the boardroom to the political arena. Political appetites, early flirtations, and public doubts. While the presidency of the United States might have seemed a sudden, unprecedented leap for a reality television star and real estate mogul in 2016, Donald Trump's political appetites were far from a new development. His interest in the nation's highest office had surfaced intermittently for decades, often as a fleeting thought or a bold pronouncement, revealing a growing fascination with the power and attention that came with political leadership. As early as 1988, fueled by the success of The Art of the Deal and his burgeoning celebrity, Trump publicly toyed with the idea of a presidential run as a Republican. He appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show, suggesting he might pursue the office if the political establishments of both parties failed the country. This early flirtation, though not leading to a formal campaign, showed his willingness to consider himself as an outsider voice capable of disrupting the political landscape. A more significant exploration came in 2000, when he briefly pursued the Reform Party's presidential nomination. During this period, he articulated positions that, in retrospect, foreshadowed his later political platform: a focus on issues like trade imbalances, a skeptical view of international agreements, and a preference for unconventional solutions. He publicly lambasted the two-party system as totalitarian. However, his bid ultimately fizzled as he dropped out of the race, citing the party's internal divisions. Throughout the 2000s, even as The Apprentice solidified his celebrity status, Trump increasingly injected himself into political commentary. He became an outspoken critic of various administrations and policies, often through media appearances on cable news, where his blunt, unvarnished opinions garnered attention. He consistently criticized American economic policy, particularly trade deals, and expressed skepticism about foreign adventurism. While often aligning with conservative viewpoints, his ideas frequently diverged from traditional Republican orthodoxy, favoring an almost populist nationalism. A pivotal moment in his political ascendance, and one that highlighted his unique ability to command attention and challenge conventional norms, occurred in 2011. Trump became the most prominent public figure to champion the birtherism conspiracy theory, which falsely claimed that Barack Obama was not born in the United States and therefore ineligible to be president. He relentlessly pressed the issue, demanding Obama produce his long-form birth certificate. While this campaign drew widespread condemnation from established political figures, the mainstream media, and both Republican and Democratic parties, it simultaneously earned Trump significant media airtime and surprising support among a segment of the American population deeply skeptical of Obama and distrustful of mainstream institutions. The birtherism controversy was a revelation. It demonstrated Trump's willingness to embrace, amplify, and ride a wave of populist grievance, no matter how unfounded the claims. It showed his capacity to tap into public anxieties and frustrations, appealing directly to a base that felt ignored or misrepresented by traditional politics and media. It also solidified his image as an unconventional, anti-establishment figure willing to challenge prevailing narratives, regardless of the criticism. Despite withdrawing from a potential 2012 presidential bid, the birther episode proved he could galvanize supporters and dominate political discourse, laying crucial groundwork for his later, more serious, and ultimately successful plunge into national politics. The unlikeliest candidate, the 2016 campaign. On June 16, 2015, Donald Trump descended the golden escalator in the lobby of Trump Tower, a carefully orchestrated entrance that would launch one of the most unconventional and consequential presidential campaigns in modern American history. "I am officially running for President of the United States," he declared, setting the stage for a political earthquake that would reshape the Republican Party and stun the world by putting a reality television star in the Oval Office. From the outset, Trump's campaign defied every political playbook. His official announcement speech, delivered without a teleprompter, was a meandering, often provocative address that attacked Mexican immigrants as rapists, criticized China for economic policies, and promised to make America great again. This blunt, unvarnished style, dismissed as political suicide by pundits and the Republican establishment, instead resonated deeply with a segment of the electorate feeling unheard and left behind. His campaign strategy eschewed traditional campaign infrastructure. Instead of relying on a vast field organization or extensive grassroots networks, Trump held large, often raucous rallies, drawing thousands of fervent supporters who chanted his slogans and reveled in his anti-establishment rhetoric. These rallies became the pulsating heart of his campaign, serving as direct communication channels, entertainment events, and powerful visual affirmations of his widespread appeal. Crucially, Trump leveraged social media, particularly Twitter, to bypass traditional media outlets and communicate directly with his supporters. His unfiltered, often inflammatory tweets generated constant media coverage, ensuring he dominated the news cycle and dictated the national conversation. This strategy, while often criticized for its content, proved remarkably effective at maintaining momentum without spending vast sums on advertising. The Republican primary field was crowded, featuring established politicians like Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, and Ted Cruz. Many believed Trump's candidacy was a publicity stunt that would soon fade. Yet, he consistently defied expectations. His aggressive attacks on rivals, his populist messaging on issues like border security, trade protectionism, and draining the swamp, and his image as an outsider willing to speak uncomfortable truths, captivated a base tired of political correctness and perceived elitism. He won early primaries, building an unstoppable momentum that culminated in him securing the Republican nomination, much to the chagrin of the party's traditional leaders. The general election pitted Trump against Hillary Clinton, a former First Lady, Senator, and Secretary of State, who was widely seen as the embodiment of the political establishment Trump railed against. The campaign was one of the most contentious in American history, marked by personal attacks, numerous controversies, including the Access Hollywood tape and the ongoing fallout from Clinton's private email server, and a sharp focus on cultural grievances. Trump tapped into anxieties about globalization, job losses in manufacturing, and a perceived decline in American strength. He promised to put America first, a stark contrast to Clinton's more globalist outlook. Against most predictions from pollsters and mainstream media, Trump won the Electoral College. He achieved victory by flipping key Rust Belt states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, states that had reliably voted Democratic for decades. His victory was a stunning upset, a repudiation of conventional political wisdom, and a dramatic turning point in American politics. On January 20, 2017, the reality television star, real estate mogul, and self-proclaimed dealmaker was sworn in as the 45th President of the United States, initiating a new and unpredictable era. The Oval Office, architect of policy and disruption, Donald Trump's transition to the presidency, like his campaign, was marked by unprecedented challenges and a blend of traditional appointments intertwined with highly unconventional choices. Upon taking office on January 20, 2017, his administration swiftly moved to implement its America First agenda, an approach that promised to prioritize domestic interests, reshape international alliances, and dismantle regulations deemed burdensome. One of his administration's most significant legislative achievements was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. This sweeping overhaul of the U.S. tax code reduced corporate and individual income tax rates, simplified the tax structure, and introduced new deductions. Proponents argued it would stimulate economic growth and create jobs, while critics contended it disproportionately benefited corporations and the wealthy, increasing the national debt. Nevertheless, it marked a substantial legislative victory early in his term. Equally impactful was Trump's focus on shaping the federal judiciary. He consistently prioritized the appointment of conservative judges to federal courts, including the Supreme Court. During his single term, he appointed 3 justices to the nation's highest court: Neil Gorsuch, 2017, Brett Kavanaugh, 2018, and Amy Coney Barrett, 2020. These appointments dramatically shifted the ideological balance of the court to a solid conservative majority, a legacy that will influence American law and society for decades. Beyond the Supreme Court, his administration appointed a record number of federal appellate and district court judges, fulfilling a key promise to his conservative base. While he successfully passed tax reform and appointed numerous judges, efforts to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, ACA, also known as Obamacare, proved unsuccessful. Despite repeated attempts and campaign promises to dismantle the healthcare law, internal Republican divisions, and a lack of consensus on a viable replacement plan led to its survival, a notable legislative defeat for his administration. The high-profile failure to repeal was highlighted by Senator John McCain's dramatic, thumbs-down vote, which effectively sank the bill. Trump's communications style remained as unconventional as his campaign. He continued to rely heavily on Twitter, using the platform to announce policy decisions, issue executive orders, promote his agenda, and attack perceived enemies. This direct communication strategy bypassed traditional media outlets, but often generated continuous controversy, blurring the lines between governing and campaigning. Supporters saw it as an authentic voice, while critics viewed it as detrimental to presidential decorum and the stability of institutions. His initial months in office were also characterized by a rapid succession of executive actions, aiming to fulfill campaign pledges. He withdrew the U.S. from the Trans-Pacific Partnership (TPP) trade agreement, signaling his skeptical approach to multilateral trade deals. He also initiated efforts to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border, a central campaign promise, which encountered significant political and legal hurdles. This period showcased Trump's disruptive approach to governance. He challenged established norms, sought to reshape long-standing policy approaches, and maintained his confrontational posture towards perceived opponents, whether political adversaries, the press, or international bodies. His presidency began with a clear intent to dismantle the status quo and operate on his own terms, setting a tone that would define his entire term. Global stage, domestic divides, foreign policy, and internal strife. Donald Trump's America First doctrine fundamentally reshaped United States foreign policy, marking a distinct departure from decades of multilateralism and traditional alliances. His approach prioritized perceived American economic interests and sovereignty above global cooperation, often unsettling allies and emboldening adversaries. A defining characteristic of his foreign policy was the withdrawal from international agreements. Early in his term, he exited the Trans-Pacific Partnership (TPP), a trade deal involving a dozen Pacific Rim nations, arguing it was detrimental to American jobs. Later, he pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement on climate change, asserting it unfairly burdened the American economy. Perhaps most significantly, he abandoned the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, and reimposed stringent sanctions, arguing the deal was too lenient on Tehran. These withdrawals signaled a global retrenchment and a preference for bilateral negotiations over complex, multinational frameworks. In diplomacy, Trump favored a direct, often unconventional, approach. Most notably, he engaged in unprecedented direct summits with North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, in Singapore, 2018, Hanoi, 2019, and at the Demilitarized Zone, 2019. These meetings, a stark break from decades of U.S. policy, aimed to achieve denuclearization. While they produced historic imagery, concrete progress on denuclearization remained largely elusive. His relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin also drew significant scrutiny, particularly in light of ongoing investigations into Russian interference in the 2016 election, creating a complex and often strained dynamic with traditional allies. His administration launched a trade war with China, imposing tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods and drawing retaliatory measures from Beijing. The aim was to rebalance the trade deficit and pressure China on intellectual property practices and market access. While a Phase 1 trade deal was signed, many of the core issues remained unresolved. In the Middle East, Trump pursued a strategy focused on regional realignments. He moved the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in 2018, fulfilling a long-time promise contested by Palestinians and many international bodies. Later, in 2020, his administration brokered the Abraham Accords, a series of historic agreements normalizing relations between Israel and several Arab nations, including the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. These deals, largely excluding the Palestinian question, reshaped the regional diplomatic landscape. Domestically, the administration pursued strict immigration policies. The zero-tolerance policy at the southern border in 2018 led to the controversial separation of thousands of children from their parents, drawing widespread condemnation both domestically and internationally. He also issued several travel bans, primarily targeting citizens from several Muslim-majority countries, which faced numerous legal challenges but were ultimately upheld in modified form by the Supreme Court. The construction of a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border remained a signature, contentious project throughout his term. Internally, Trump's White House was marked by exceptionally high staff turnover, particularly in senior positions. Constant internal feuds, often aired in public or through media leaks, characterized his administration. From cabinet secretaries to White House communicators and national security advisors, a revolving door of personnel reflected the president's demanding management style and preference for loyalty above all else. This internal strife, coupled with an adversarial relationship with much of the mainstream media, contributed to a tumultuous environment that challenged traditional governmental structures. Impeachment and pandemic. Resilience and crisis. The final 2 years of Donald Trump's first term were defined by two monumental crises that tested his presidency to its core: a full-blown impeachment trial and the cataclysmic arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic. These events, occurring in rapid succession, fundamentally reshaped his administration and the nation. In July 2019, an anonymous whistleblower sparked a chain of events that led to Trump becoming only the third U.S. president to be impeached by the House of Representatives. The whistleblower's complaint alleged that Trump had leveraged U.S. foreign aid to Ukraine, conditioning its release on Ukraine announcing investigations into his political rival, Joe Biden, and his son, Hunter Biden. The House, controlled by Democrats, launched an impeachment inquiry. After weeks of testimony, which included senior administration officials, the House formally impeached Trump in December 2019 on 2 articles: abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The case then moved to the Republican-controlled Senate for a trial. In February 2020, following weeks of arguments and debates, the Senate voted to acquit Trump on both charges, effectively ending the impeachment process. The trial, deeply partisan, highlighted the deepening political divisions within the country. Almost immediately following his acquittal, the world faced an unprecedented health emergency: the COVID-19 pandemic. The first cases in the U.S. were confirmed in early 2020, and the virus quickly spread, leading to widespread lockdowns, economic shutdowns, and a spiraling death toll. Trump's initial public response to the pandemic was characterized by efforts to downplay its severity, often expressing optimism about its rapid disappearance and promoting unproven treatments. He regularly held press briefings that sometimes contradicted public health experts within his own administration, and he was often reluctant to embrace public health measures like mask mandates, which he viewed as impinging on personal liberty. Despite controversies surrounding his rhetoric and approach, his administration did launch Operation Warp Speed, an ambitious public-private partnership aimed at accelerating the development, manufacturing, and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines and therapeutics. This initiative, unprecedented in its scope and speed, played a crucial role in delivering multiple vaccines to the U.S. population within a year, a testament to the scientific and logistical capabilities marshaled under his leadership. The pandemic, however, had a devastating impact on the American economy. Businesses were forced to close, unemployment soared to levels unseen since the Great Depression, and the U.S. government implemented massive stimulus packages to cushion the blow. Trump's economic record prior to the pandemic had been a significant point of pride for his administration, with sustained growth and historically low unemployment figures. The arrival of COVID-19 abruptly ended this period of prosperity, becoming the overarching issue that dominated the remainder of his term and shaped the unfolding 2020 presidential election. The dual crises of impeachment and the pandemic underscored the tumultuous nature of Trump's presidency. They revealed his resilience in the face of political attacks and his approach to leadership during a national emergency, setting the stage for one of the most consequential re-election campaigns in American history. The 2020 re-election bid and its aftermath. Despite the unprecedented backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic and the lingering fallout from his impeachment trial, Donald Trump launched a vigorous campaign for re-election in 2020. He campaigned fiercely, holding large rallies that, while defying public health recommendations, energized his base. His message focused on his pre-pandemic economic record, a law and order platform, and sharp criticisms of Democratic opponent Joe Biden, whom he labeled as too liberal and beholden to radical elements of his party. The election itself was historic, conducted amidst the challenges of a global pandemic, which led to a massive expansion of mail-in voting. Record numbers of Americans cast their ballots, eager to have their say on the direction of the country. On November 7, 2020, after days of vote counting, Joe Biden was declared the winner of the election, having secured enough electoral college votes. However, the aftermath of the election plunged the nation into an unparalleled period of political turmoil. Donald Trump and his campaign launched an unprecedented legal and public campaign to challenge the results, alleging widespread voter fraud and irregularities. Through dozens of lawsuits filed in multiple states, the campaign argued that the election had been rigged against him. These lawsuits, however, were overwhelmingly rejected by state and federal courts, including the Supreme Court, with judges often citing a lack of evidence. Election officials, including Republican appointees, across the country affirmed the integrity of the vote. Even Trump's own Justice Department, led by Attorney General William Barr, found no evidence of widespread fraud that would have changed the outcome. Despite the judicial defeats and the consensus among election experts, Trump refused to concede the election. He continued to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the results, claiming he had been the true winner. This strategy culminated on January 6, 2021. Following a Stop the Steal rally held in Washington, D.C., where Trump addressed thousands of his supporters, a mob marched to the U.S. Capitol building. Overcoming security barriers, they violently breached the building, interrupting Congress as lawmakers were meeting to certify the Electoral College votes. The events of January 6 were a shocking display of political unrest. Lawmakers, including Vice President Mike Pence, were forced to evacuate, and the Capitol complex was put on lockdown. The riot resulted in injuries and fatalities, and widespread condemnation from around the world. Critics accused Trump of inciting the insurrection through his rhetoric, particularly his repeated claims of a stolen election and his urging of supporters to march to the Capitol. In the wake of the riot, and with just days left in his term, the House of Representatives impeached Donald Trump for a second time, charging him with incitement of insurrection. He thus became the only U.S. president to be impeached twice. Following his departure from office on January 20, 2021, the Senate held an impeachment trial. He was ultimately acquitted, as the two-thirds majority required for conviction was not met. The 2020 election and its aftermath laid bare the deep political divisions within the United States. Trump's refusal to concede, his challenges to electoral integrity, and the events of January 6 left an indelible mark on American democracy, pushing the boundaries of presidential conduct and highlighting the fragility of democratic institutions. It marked a contentious end to his presidency, but not the end of his political influence. Post-presidency, continuing influence and legal challenges. After departing the White House on January 20, 2021, Donald Trump, rather than receding from public life, cemented his status as a central, highly active, and often disruptive force in American politics. Relocating primarily to Mar-a-Lago, his private club in Palm Beach, Florida, he maintained a constant political presence, continuing to hold rallies, issue endorsements, and shape the Republican Party in his image. Despite the fact that he was no longer in office, Trump retained an undeniable political gravity. He became a coveted kingmaker within the Republican Party, with numerous candidates for state and federal offices seeking his endorsement as crucial for their success in primary elections. His rallies, while no longer carrying the weight of a sitting president's appearances, continued to draw thousands of devoted supporters, serving as platforms for him to air grievances, promote favored candidates, and hint at his future intentions. Following his ban from Twitter after January 6, he launched his own social media platform, Truth Social, attempting to create an independent channel for his communications and further build his media empire. However, his post-presidency has been uniquely characterized by an unprecedented array of legal challenges and investigations, overshadowing even his significant political maneuvering. One major area of focus has been the federal investigation into his handling of classified documents after leaving office. In August 2022, the FBI conducted a search of Mar-a-Lago, recovering numerous boxes of documents, some highly classified, that the National Archives and Records Administration had been attempting to retrieve. This led to a federal indictment in Florida, charging Trump with violations of the Espionage Act and obstruction of justice, alleging that he willfully retained classified documents and obstructed government efforts to retrieve them. Simultaneously, Trump faced ongoing scrutiny related to the January 6th Capitol attack. Congressional investigations, including the House Select Committee's probe, placed significant blame on Trump for inciting the riot. The Department of Justice also conducted broader investigations into the events of that day. In New York, Trump and his business empire faced significant legal pressure. The New York Attorney General filed a sweeping civil fraud lawsuit against Trump, his adult children, and the Trump Organization, alleging a decade-long scheme to inflate the value of his assets to obtain favorable loans and insurance terms. Separately, a Manhattan grand jury indicted Trump on criminal charges related to alleged hush money payments made during the 2016 campaign to a porn star, marking the first time a former U.S. president faced criminal charges. Georgia also emerged as a battleground for legal troubles. A state grand jury in Fulton County investigated efforts by Trump and his allies to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia. This probe culminated in a sweeping racketeering (RICO) indictment, charging Trump and numerous co-defendants with an illegal scheme to subvert the will of the voters. Amidst these escalating legal battles, Trump announced his candidacy for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination in November 2022. This declaration set up a novel scenario: a former president facing multiple criminal indictments while simultaneously campaigning to return to the White House. His legal challenges, rather than sidelining him, often became central to his political narrative, allowing him to portray himself as a victim of political persecution and a fighting populist, doubling down on his anti-establishment appeal. The period following his departure from office demonstrates Donald Trump's enduring and complex role in American public life. Out of the White House, he remained a potent political force, yet one increasingly defined by the legal scrutiny that sought to unravel aspects of his business, his presidency, and his challenges to democratic norms. Legacy and future: assessing the Trump phenomenon. Donald Trump's journey from a Queens real estate scion to a global brand, reality television star, and ultimately the 45th President of the United States, represents one of the most remarkable and disruptive trajectories in modern American history. His life and career defy easy categorization, leaving behind a complex, contested, and evolving legacy that continues to shape the nation's political, social, and cultural landscape. One of Trump's most profound impacts has been on the Republican Party. Before his rise, the GOP was largely defined by conservative principles of fiscal responsibility, limited government, and a strong, interventionist foreign policy. Trump reshaped it into a more populist, nationalist, and personality-driven entity. He successfully tapped into a vein of economic nationalism, skepticism of global institutions, and cultural grievance that resonated with a significant portion of the electorate, particularly working-class voters in the Rust Belt. His influence turned the party further towards an America First foreign policy and an increasingly confrontational stance on immigration and trade. He demonstrated that electoral success could be achieved by challenging perceived political correctness and speaking directly to a base often feeling ignored by the establishment. Even out of office, his endorsement remained a potent force in Republican primaries, illustrating his continued gravitational pull over the party. His presidency undeniably exacerbated partisan divides within American politics and society. His confrontational rhetoric, frequent attacks on the media, and challenges to electoral institutions contributed to an environment of heightened animosity and distrust. While these trends were present before his presidency, many argue he accelerated them, creating a more polarized political discourse where common ground became increasingly elusive. The erosion of trust in traditional media outlets, the judiciary, and even the electoral process itself has been a significant consequence, with implications for democratic functionality. Economically, his legacy is mixed. He inherited a growing economy with declining unemployment pre-pandemic, and his tax cuts were a significant legislative achievement. However, trade wars with China and other nations disrupted global supply chains, and the national debt significantly increased during his term. His administration also oversaw a dramatic increase in deregulation across various sectors, which proponents argued spurred growth, while critics raised environmental and consumer protection concerns. Perhaps his longest-lasting institutional legacy is the transformation of the federal judiciary. By appointing 3 conservative Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, and hundreds of conservative federal judges, he ensured a rightward shift in judicial philosophy that will influence American law, civil rights, and constitutional interpretation for generations. This fulfills a long-held conservative ambition and will have consequences stretching far beyond his time in office. The Trump phenomenon itself demands ongoing analysis. How did a billionaire real estate developer become a champion of the working class? How did a reality TV star who consistently broke political norms capture the highest office? Part of the answer lies in his unique blend of celebrity, anti-establishment rhetoric, and direct, unfiltered communication style. He tapped into a deep vein of frustration with traditional politics, offering simple solutions to complex problems and a willingness to fight against the perceived elites. His rallies were not just political events, but cultural experiences, fostering a powerful sense of community and shared identity among his supporters. As of this writing, Donald Trump remains a prominent and active figure, campaigning for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination while simultaneously navigating an unprecedented array of legal challenges, including criminal indictments. This dual reality, seeking the nation's highest office while confronting profound legal jeopardy, is itself an unprecedented chapter in American history. Ultimately, assessing Donald Trump's legacy is a task still in progress. He was a president who evoked powerful and often contradictory emotions, fierce loyalty from his base, and profound opposition from his critics. He challenged democratic norms, rewrote political campaign rules, and fundamentally altered the landscape of American politics. Whether his impact is viewed as a necessary disruption that challenged a failing establishment or a dangerous precedent that eroded democratic institutions, is a debate that will likely continue for decades, far beyond the confines of this book. His story is a testament to the enduring American fascination with iconoclasm, wealth, and power, and an ongoing chronicle of a nation grappling with its own identity in a rapidly changing world.